Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Andy Zoll and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday, so you can subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get a notification whenever we go live. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Andy, thanks for joining us this week. How you doing?
I'm good. Always a pleasure. We were talking about this a little bit before coming on, but this is my first time, I believe, with the new digs here. So
yeah,
it's nice.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
You are going to love it.
I'm already enjoying it.
Already into it?
Yep.
Yeah. Loyal listener Bill just did a great job building this thing. And even though he over-engineers everything, he's still disappointed with it. It's what I really like.
It's really nice to know people who know how to do things. It's like...
I know. Yeah. But I mean, if you talk to him about how much you like it, he actively is just like, yeah, but I could have done this and I could have been done. I wanted to do this, but you got to get it in. Just like, it's good, man. It's really good. Anna, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. Thanks a lot to Ben Munson for filling in for me last week. Last minute, I had a sick kid. Speaking of which, I think the best thing about the new layout is if one of us has a cold, then we don't all have to get it. We have like maybe 50% chance instead of 100%.
Yeah, it's not as tight.
Not as tight.
We're all like amateur virologists now. So
I know.
Yeah.
Well, is it?
Those percentages are science. For sure. I read those in a book.
I mean, everyone's like kids are sick right now, right? Or is this just like some sort of Wisconsin specific virus everywhere?
Just like this nondescript virus haze that has just taken over my life. I don't know.
Oh, it's another virus. Like, do they ever stop? No, they don't. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Well, this episode is brought to you by Clio Communications. Increasing efforts in digitalization, automation, and analytics is a priority for 30% of operation and supply chain officers heading into 2025. However, the majority of the supply chain workforce still lacks the digital expertise needed to operate promising tools, such as generative artificial intelligence and automation tools. The 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report from Clio Communications gives you a detailed look into what supply chain organizations are doing or not doing to prepare their workforce for emerging tech, along with the digital skills you need to embed it into your hiring criteria. There it is. Download it now. Check out their report. Let us know what you think. All right. Our first story this week. Technology has increased lockout accountability. On the latest episode of 5 Minutes with IEN, which admittedly runs just a shade over 12 minutes, Bill Belangi from Masterlock discusses how lockout procedures have evolved. Belangi says, quote, "We can write our lockout procedures and we can have policies, programs, and training, but how can we ensure that individuals are executing them correctly? Until 1989, when OSHA mandated written lockout documents for authorized personnel to follow, industry professionals relied on tribal knowledge. So workers relied on people and word of mouth to make work safer. Over the years, manufacturers have looked for more efficient ways to do things. Belangi says technology has increased accountability, specifically when it comes to lockout. For example, locks are now more sophisticated. Smart locks can be connected to a platform that allows plant and safety managers to see where lockouts are occurring on the floor in real time. He also says manufacturers will soon use lockout data to see where most lockouts happen and solve issues like retrofitting equipment to prevent future work stoppages. He encourages manufacturers to embrace technology and see how it can help their organizations. Andy, I think the biggest reason people still cheat lockout is because it's time consuming. Do you see this trend improving with technology? Because it seems like this one in particular, as lockout technology has evolved, so has the shortcut. So have the shortcuts.
Yeah, if you can make things less arduous, people will be more adept to say, okay, I'll actually follow the rules on this. So one thing that stood out when watching this little more than 5 minutes with IAN was
Touch over.
It's not built for David.
Yeah.
It's not a format built for David.
It was just a reminder that this is still kind of a relatively new process. I mean, 1989 is when it was implemented. That's less than 40 years ago. There's probably some workers still on the job who predate that. So anytime you can get technology, software to make it easier to understand what you're actually trying to do, that's, one less hurdle to overcome when trying to address maybe some corners cutting at this particular procedure. So there's that. And I also thought it was interesting talking about retrofitting equipment to decrease the number of lockout and tagout procedures altogether, because it's always easier to deal with something if you don't have to do it all the time. If it's just, if you can cut that in half or however much you can reduce it by, I mean, that's it'll be much easier to tell your workers to be like, hey, just do, this one time, you won't have to do it. It won't take over your life, basically. So, sure. Long answer, I guess, is yes.
No, I like the idea of it's not just the problematic equipment. It's okay, we see this frequently, let's just fix it. And so that way we're not always working on it. And Anna, just the format, it's hard to ask 2 to 3 questions without a follow-up. It's just like, so what do you think about this? And then there's an answer and it's like, whoa, wait now.
Nope.
What about this? I get it.
No follow-ups allowed.
I know. I was really hamstrung to keep it at 12:02.
Yeah.
So do you think, one thing is that with this new tech, it's obviously not going to be as inexpensive. Do you see manufacturers seeing more of the long-term investment when it comes to more powerful tools when it comes to lockout?
Well, I think there's a lot of variables in play here. Obviously, as Andy mentioned, the regulations and the standards have been in place for several decades. Short term in manufacturing's lifespan, but long enough that it's a little alarming that this is still cited regularly in the OSHA top 10 violation.
Top 5.
It's
top 5 last year, yeah.
6 the year before, I think. And so so it's still an area where you're seeing a lot of compliance issues, a lot of, as you said, workarounds. I think this type of coverage, I think it does a good job of helping make the case for why manufacturers need to update their technology to protect these workers. But I also think that there's a lot more to it when you think about like how these companies operate day to day, how they're looking at risk, how they're looking at their investment strategy in terms of updating their equipment. I think the next couple months, to be honest with you, might be telling in terms of some of the fluctuating market conditions that we're seeing.
Very softly put.
It's a democratic way of putting it, but yes, business optimism is higher, right? We know that. Inflation is trending lower. We do have this kind of tariff thing hanging over the heads of a lot of businesses that could potentially undo all of that, the inflation thing, the optimism thing, which would likely, I think, dramatically decrease some of the investments that some of these manufacturers are pledging to make currently. And then add to that the potential for any regulatory changes. And I think if we do see those, it's likely they will become less strict versus more strict. And then you wonder if you see businesses' priorities change. And I think on the bright side here is the fact that manufacturers still need workers. So, there's no better way, in my opinion, to show your workforce that you care about safety than not just saying it, but walking the talk, implementing a new system, something that's very visible, then you can point to and say, look, we're putting money into this because we care about sending you home in the same condition in which you came to work. Hopefully manufacturers are going to want to continue to prove their commitment to safety and also look at downtime costs related to issues that come up with rotating machinery and causing accidents there. All of those play into their profitability, of course, and not just focusing on pulling back because they're worried or looking at regulatory changes that maybe don't warrant as much rigid standardization or adoption of these new technologies.
You know what I was encouraged by? When we published this story, I had it earmarked for mine in case you missed it this week. Because I was just like, all right, I don't know where it's going to be, but it's near the bottom. And then to see it show up as the 5th most read story, a lot of times we're talking lockout, tagout because we're talking about what went wrong at a manufacturer. And this was like maybe the first time in 206 episodes where we're talking about it was the most popular, and they were talking about best practices and new technology. And I thought that was very encouraging.
It is.
I was also surprised to see that some of this technology, like seeing what's happening in real time on the shop floor, surprised that it wasn't so widely implemented yet. When you're talking about software that traces the lockout procedure, isolation point to isolation point, you're talking about like real-time prevention of very serious, potentially catastrophic injuries. And that just seems like a very powerful tool that they could have used. I also, Andy, to your point, I was really encouraged by the re-engineering and retrofitting machines, just overall decreasing the amount of lockouts. And, when I was talking to Belangi, he actually was very encouraged that there will be a time in the near future where lockout tagout isn't even in the top 10. And I understand that's coming from a guy that works at Master Lock. So, but I don't know. I found that pretty encouraging just because, I don't know if we're talking to a fall protection guy, he's going to be like, falls going to be out of the top 10 in the next 10 years. And she's like, I don't know. I think people are going to keep falling off of stuff. But I found it very encouraging in general. But I don't know. We'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. Anytime you're talking about getting that off the top of the list, that brings down accidents altogether. So it'd be good for everybody,
Yeah, you're talking, it's like 2,000 citations a year. So, if we could just, because those violations typically come as a result of somebody getting injured. So, that could change a lot of lives out there if they could just do it a little better. All right. Our second most popular story this week. As tariffs loom, cosmetics giant eyes 7,000 job cuts. Late last year, Estee Lauder, a massive manufacturer of beauty and skincare products, announced a planned turnaround after declining sales. At the time, the company said it would cut 3,000 jobs to reduce millions in costs. The company employs around 62,000 people. Now, this week, the New York-based company revealed its Q2 results and a need to more than double down on its cost-cutting plan. Estee Lauder's second quarter was marked by a sales decrease of 6%. The worst part of the report was likely its third quarter forecast, which has profits falling well below estimates. As a result, the company plans to cut up to 7,000 jobs. The company plans to cut $1 billion in costs by the middle of next year. Estee Lauder blames weak demand, pointing especially to airport sales as well as its businesses in Asia. The company also says the aggressive plan will, quote, manage external volatility like potential tariff increases. Estee Lauder has factories in Africa, Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. To turn things around, besides the job cuts, the company does plan to invest in innovation at various price points to attract a greater variety of customers. Anna, as Estee Lauder continues to adjust, is it possible that we might even see more job cuts on top of the 7,000?
I don't know if we have any way of knowing that. And it's possible that they're trying to get out at the high end of it to just set some expectations. But I do think that there are several things working against the company now. And you detailed a few of those. I think in more detail here, inflation is a big one. Mm-hmm. People are scaling back on non-essential purchases, things like luxury items like skincare and luxury makeup products, things like that. And then the other thing you have to consider too is the market segment that spends the most in those categories, like higher end, makeup and luxury items, cosmetics, things like that, are actually Gen Z and millennials. Yeah. And the report actually talked about how those younger generations are starting to look to other brands as their ideals. This is a longstanding brand, but maybe it's turned into like what your mom wore or what your grandma used. Or
the Cadillac of makeup now, right?
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then not to mention the company has acknowledged as well that they have been having some problems in Asia. They spent a lot of money. They invested a lot of money in that market. So it's not just about tariffs, of course, but I do think this situation, when I saw it, I think it will illustrate some of the fallout that we might see with tariffs and how it's going to take shape. And that is with companies like this who are already wobbling. Mm-hmm. I think it might not take more than just the threat of tariffs to actually spook them a little bit into pulling back and cutting some costs. I think that's what we're seeing here. I think that's why we saw that the guess on the number doubled.
Double, yeah.
Because anyone who's already on this path of restructuring or in a turnaround type situation, I don't think they need much of a push to get thrown off balance. And for companies that have Chinese supply chains, 10% is enough to kind of blow a hole in a margin or maybe wipe it out entirely. Maybe not entirely in a high-end cosmetic company, I don't know. But if you have a lot of investments that are kind of riding on this, who knows? Mm-hmm. If you want to look at another company that I think is on very tenuous footing right now, that's Nissan. Mm-hmm. Nissan is headquartered in Japan, obviously, but it's a global entity when it comes to its supply chain. It employs thousands of workers in North America. It builds vehicles in Canada and Mexico as well. Experts have called this potential 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico an existential threat to Nissan. Mm-hmm. Like, it's on such tenuous footing that it could wipe out its margins entirely, or tank its sales volume, or both of those things, neither of which Nissan can likely withstand. So I think, whether or not you see the tariff part of this presentation by Estee Lauder as a bit of a scapegoat, it's just one of many things. I think it is enough for some companies to really, really be disruptive, even if it's just a threat at this point, as it pertains to some of the North American countries that are being targeted here. So I do think that if they are feeling like they need to hedge against a worst case scenario, even with just a threat, then this needs to be wrapped up really quickly.
Were you surprised with how much of their sales was tied to airports and travel destinations?
Well, they have airport stores.
Yeah. I was just, but like, I always see an airport store and the one or two people in it. I guess I never thought that those were doing such banging business.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as a super lucrative, or like, if that's a huge part of your business, that doesn't strike me as particularly healthy, but
yeah, like,
what do I know?
Maybe if you do plush moose animals in the Minnesota market, I understand that a huge cut of that is out at like airports.
But like, what is the premium on airport retail? I mean, think about how much you pay for a bottle of water in an airport, like $5. I mean,
it's criminal.
So if they're doing that and they have just insane margins, maybe that does carry a good part of the business. I don't know.
Is this just for people who forgot their makeup?
I think people are bored.
Yeah, people just shop.
Yeah, they shop. They're going to see people. They're buying gifts.
I mean, I've been there, but I've never like bought anything.
Yeah, you've never bought any high-end cosmetics at the airport?
Can't say that I have, unless I'm forgetting something.
I never understood airport retail until having kids. And then if you're gone for like 2 or 3 days, and sometimes you're walking through for that $90 bottle of water, and they have some sort of toy Lamborghini, let's say, it's like, he's really loving Lamborghinis lately.
Yeah.
I've been a horrible father for being away for so long. So how about I fix this problem at the door?
Okay.
Yeah, this $14 keychain will do it.
Yeah.
I was thinking like if you've got kids in tow and you desperately need to occupy them over a layover, kind of thing.
Any of that stuff.
Yeah. We'll see come spring break how that works.
Yep.
Just how much money goes into that. Anyway, when I was reading the story, one thing that really jumped out to me was that, Anna kind of points to maybe Estee Lauder is becoming your mother's makeup company, right? But I couldn't believe that a company that size didn't have the ability to change to cater to millennials and Gen Z.
I mean, it's hard to make that pivot sometimes when it's in the back of consumers' brains already.
Yeah, this is how it's always been. We've always been the best. Why change?
Yeah, and if you're not out in front of it, then suddenly you're in trouble, and it happens really fast. To me, I mean, obviously, tariffs are a consideration here like they are for everybody. But to me, this kind of looks like something we see from time to time where a company will announce a lot of job cuts, a lot of cost-cutting measures, and then a year or two later, they'll announce more because it wasn't enough. So that's what this looks like to me. We've gone a little bit into the airport retail part of this, but you talked a little bit about investing in the Chinese market. Consumer spending in China has been sluggish. And if you look at the projections, there was an article, I think, a few weeks ago about their performance, the government's report on their performance last year. But the forecast over the next few years is not particularly rosy. There's a lot of factors way beyond tariffs there. They had a tough post-pandemic recovery, and there are persistent demographic challenges there. So there's, I don't know how they fix that. There's a lot of things going on here, but that's a tricky one to try and figure out for that market especially.
Well, in China was a quarter of the company's sales in 2024. They say that unemployment, the economy, as you say, and increasing preference for local brands is causing some of that market shift. But again, if you're Estee Lauder, like, launch a Chinese specific brand, or
maybe they have one. They're the parent and they have a lot of different brands.
Yeah, that's like Clinique and MAC.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's probably got to be a Chinese alternative.
Whatever they're doing, it's not enough. That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
No, I pulled out a quote from Sky Canaves, analyst with eMarketer. Sky told Reuters, quote, "The company still has a long way to go in proving that it can innovate and adapt sufficiently to meet the needs of younger beauty customers." And again, I tell you what, being of the Estee Lauder generation, probably now when I have to go and like pick up some sort of mascara or eyeliner for my wife, when I go into that section of the store, I'm just lost, absolute lost. And man, the color palette really has, let's just say, grown from the, every once in a while, it's just like, hey, you sent me here for eyeliner. You're going to get like neon green, Joker green eyeliner.
That's what you wanted,
yeah,
right?
Actually, that would probably look really good on her. She wears green well. But no, it'll be interesting to see what happens to them going on. And Anna, to your point, what other companies might be facing similar cuts in the near future. Mm-hmm. All right. Our next most popular story this week. Porsche and Audi look for U.S. manufacturing answers to impending tariff troubles. Porsche and Audi are facing a tariff problem. Right now, every Porsche is made in Europe, and Audi makes cars pretty much everywhere but the U.S. According to CarScoops, both brands, which are owned by Volkswagen, are looking to set up shop in the United States, and they might find a familiar home. The landing spot with the most potential could be VW's plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The plant makes VW's Atlas SUV and the ID4 electric SUV. But let's just say the plant might have some room to spare. For example, U.S. sales of the ID4 plummeted 55% last year. Overall, EV sales experienced moderate growth in the United States, and they also kind of had a jump at the end of 2024. If Porsche and Audi make the move, they'll likely make larger SUVs. For example, Porsche plans to make the K1 SUV on VW Group's Scalable Systems Platform, or SSP. The carmaker's modular EV car manufacturing platform that's being developed specifically for this Chattanooga plant. Audi could also move into VW Group's new plant in South Carolina. That plant is going to make the new Scout EV. More on that later. And it's rumored that Audi could see a version of it. Either way, Porsche and Audi will have to do something. Porsche sold a record 76,000 and change vehicles in the United States last year, and Audi, despite a 14% drop in sales, still moved more than 196,000 units. Tariffs could have a huge impact on VW's bottom line if something isn't done. The new manufacturing footprint would be a first for both brands. Neither of them have U.S.-based operations. Anna, is this the beginning of a larger reshoring renaissance?
In my opinion, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I do think potentially for Porsche and Audi, it could make sense. I don't know. Of course, everyone wants to see more U.S. manufacturing. But I think in automotive, this is a bit of a red herring. The auto industry supply chains are very, very complex. They're very intertwined with global partners. Reworking them is very expensive. It's very time consuming. So I truly don't think that you're going to see a lot of companies that want to undertake that when the tariffs situation, the talks have been seemingly like unpredictable, maybe even capricious, you might say. I don't think there's anyone on earth, not even Donald Trump, who could tell us where we're going to be at with this, even, in a week or two or a month or two. Are these tariffs going to last his entire term? Are they going to last for a week? Is he ever going to implement the Mexico China ones? Will there be Mexico Canada ones? Or is there going to be an EU tariff? We don't even know that. So with that said, his decisions, right or wrong, seem to defy precedent. I just don't think they're predictable at this point. When it comes to this specific situation with Porsche and Audi, maybe this is a situation where it works or makes sense because they have, as Volkswagen Group, an established footprint already. Perhaps capacity, perhaps a workforce, like that makes a huge difference than just coming in greenfield trying to set up shop in the U.S. Yeah. I do think it is hard for Volkswagen to forecast demand. I know you mentioned the ID4. I think the sales plummet last year was highly impacted by the fact that there was a stop sale on that vehicle for like almost 4 months because of a recall that they couldn't fix. Yeah. So they weren't able to sell those. They may have a lot of inventory sitting there that they need to get through, but that could be a temporary issue especially if EVs are kind of back on the upswing. And again, we don't know if that bump was artificial because people are afraid the tax credit is going to get taken away. Yeah. There's so many things happening here that it's very hard, in my opinion, to predict demand going into 2025, especially with all these other variables that could impact people's spending power and all this stuff. So that's one thing. I think the other thing to consider here is like, if Porsche wants to come here and build an SUV, that kind of makes sense. I mean, they don't sell SUVs in Europe. Yeah. Nobody buys them. I mean, that's just not what they do. Yeah. So maybe you can move that product line and make that work because of what you have established here. But by and large, auto manufacturers that are global, moving that production here without like the capacity already, like I don't know that we're going to see that now. If it becomes more clear how long this is going to last, or if this is more of a permanent change in terms of duties forever, then there's going to be some tough choices to make. But for now, I don't know that people are necessarily uprooting based on what we're seeing so far.
I could see it as a reshoring win for very similar situations, right? Like VW is building its manufacturing line in Chattanooga almost for this specific type of challenge. Where it's a
huge factory.
Yeah. It's like, okay, this SSP that we have basically makes, let's say 70% of the car, and then we can throw whatever on top and stick a badge on it. So that way, we're playing by the rules. I thought that was particularly advantageous, and maybe a little bit of foresight with the Audi as well, like that they're planning on making a Scout version for Audi. I think that's just smart. And we could see other, let's say global brands without a U.S. footprint do that, especially if they're kind of set up in a way that VW is. I see that being the most likely win when it comes to reshoring. But like you said, I don't know that people are just coming in cold, or at least not right away.
Yeah.
Since 2009, VW has invested nearly $4.5 billion in Tennessee. Andy, I mean, what do you think about this type of situation and how, it could affect not just the auto industry, but do you see other companies that might make similar changes?
So at the most simplistic level, this is the idea behind tariffs, right? Yeah. You promote they're really to promote your own manufacturers domestically, but more recently to encourage overseas companies to set up shop where you are to avoid them. So in theory, if this takes place, which I don't know, this would be an example of it working, but we're not operating in this simplistic kind of realm. There's other stuff going on. The Scout plant, which we'll talk about a little bit later, as you mentioned, that's not supposed to start delivering cars at all, even the cars they're supposed to make, until 2027. I mean, even if they have the plant, they have the space. This is not an overnight, like, oh, just send them the plans and we'll just start making these cars. Like, that's not how this works. So there's that. There's the picture with the retaliatory tariffs. So even if you're bringing jobs over, in theory, you're hurting, if Ford or GM or whoever, and I know they have plants over there, but whoever has to export over to Europe, they're now paying more, those customers over there. And there's just, as you kind of alluded to, there's just way bigger questions about why you make these decisions given the volatility of these things. One interesting thought I had, and I'm probably wrong about this, was if you have the budget for a Porsche, are you going to let a 10% price hike stop you? Or are you, because that's kind of a small market, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Are you you have your eye on a 911 and then, the price tag, I'll just buy some, I don't know, BMW? Like, no, you want the thing that looks like a Porsche. And I'll probably be proven wrong about that. But I think the more important factor is whether these tariffs will actually be implemented, because I have my doubts, as we've discussed a little bit already.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've already seen the wild volatility of threat and action and what might actually happen. And honestly, it could be argued that they have worked to get some things moving, just the threat of the tariffs.
But we ran the story this week about how those plans were mostly already in place. Like there's, yes, there are agreements in place now, but you probably could have done it without, saber rattling,
Yeah. I don't know. It's, honestly, for every reshoring win that we see, it'll be interesting to see if there is like equal impact somewhere else in terms of cuts being made, whether or not it's still just going to wind up being like a complete, like even playing field in terms of, some jobs came here, but we lost jobs over there. We have more business over here, but then we lost business over there, and it's all just going to wind up being a wash in the end. Mm-hmm. But
that's kind of what happened the first time. There wasn't a huge uptick in manufacturing as a share of the overall economy or anything.
It's I would just like anything in the U.S. to be happening right now other than tariff news, because it has just consumed everything. But rightfully so, because it has such a wide-ranging potential impact on everything manufacturing and beyond. Yeah,
that's problem number one in any sort of business context at this point, basically.
Yeah,
it's hard to focus on anything else.
We're only like a couple weeks into this second experiment, and people are already going blind to things. Just like, tell me when it's over. All right, our next most popular story this week. Company to relocate operations 1 year after acquiring facility. ASC Engineered Solutions, a flow management solutions provider, announced plans to sell a Pennsylvania facility the company acquired less than a year ago. ASC plans to relocate operations to the other side of the state. In February 2024, ASC bought pipe joining component maker Ward Manufacturing. At the end of the deal, ASC CEO Jason Hild said the move strengthened the company's core portfolio by allowing it to offer the Ward Flex corrugated stainless steel tubing system to its customers. The acquisition included Ward's factory in Blossburg, Pennsylvania. But now the Elmira Star-Gazette says ASC intends to sell the foundry and facilities, gradually shifting operations to a factory in Columbia, Pennsylvania. The transition is going to impact some 340 workers. The company plans to offer separation packages and relocation opportunities, but again, on the other side of the state, and Pennsylvania is one of those big ones. Local officials are trying to keep the plant open with potential tax incentives and other resources at the state level in the event of a sale. Anna, do you think that the writing has been on the wall from day one since the acquisition, or do you think ASC in good faith got in there and just said, all right, this just isn't economically viable?
I'll let Andy talk about what his considerations on what the plan was from
inference from 1,000 miles away.
Yeah. I think so. For me, I don't know. These types of stories, I find challenging to read. I read some follow-up coverage on this, including some statements from the company about what was taking place. They use the most well-worn and generic justification of every business move that you will ever see, which is it enables us to better serve our customers.
Yeah. We're really, you know what? We're thinking about the customers, Anna.
Yep.
The most important.
Right. And that doesn't mean that it's not true just because it's a generic statement, but it does mean it's not well explained. And I wish that it was, because a company doing something like this is like objectively disruptive to its workforce. And I just wish that they would explain it a little bit more thoroughly, like what's happening. You hope that that's being done internally at least, but we don't know. Because as you mentioned, like Blossburg and Columbia are 3 hours apart.
Yeah.
So, and it is also unclear by their statements whether all of the employees are being offered relocation opportunities or if it's a mix of some.
Yeah, management.
We don't know.
Whoever,
But either way, like it's a huge deal to relocate. Relocating is not just like a 1 for 1, cool, I still have a job, no problem. Like, today's housing market is terrible. There's a lot of scarcity. Things are really expensive. Interest rates are very high. You're moving your children out of their schools. I mean, like you're starting a new life. It's not just this, a job is a job is a job. Mm-hmm. And data tells us that older, more experienced workers are far less likely to take a relocation opportunity. Mm-hmm. So, if you have a seasoned workforce at this plant, it seems unlikely maybe that they're going to be finding this option appealing.
Yeah.
So it's bad for the community. It's bad for the company because probably a lot of people are going to say, no, thank you. And of course, this stuff happens like for any number of reasons. And, companies need to consolidate their footprint. That happens all the time. So if that's what they need to do, I get it. But I wish they don't, I wish the wording and the reasoning was not so casually presented. Like, this is for the customer. Like, well, why though? Like, tell us why. Mm-hmm. And then at least I can understand why you're kind of displacing all these people that have jobs with you for who knows how long.
So do you think it would be easier, like an easier pill to swallow if they came in and just said, hey, we had every intention of keeping it open. We did for a year. It's not working. And just like anything, there are inefficiencies that are hurting our bottom line and we just have to make a change.
Yeah. Or yes. Or even say like, hey, it's this or we have to close. Either we can, we can't pay people. We're going to have to lay people off. Like, this is the best that we can do, but here's the reason the market is doing this, or we have to pay more for this or whatever.
COVID.
Yeah. No, stop saying COVID. It's too, we're past that.
Yeah.
It would be nice to know what's actually happening and not just like, it's a major event for the community. It's a major event for the workers. Like, treat it that way and be honest.
No, completely agree. Andy, so with a lot of acquisitions, a lot of these decisions are already made going into it. So, I mean, I get it where it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to operate for a year so that way it doesn't look that bad. But what are your thoughts? Has the writing always been on the wall, or is this something that maybe, they just came to the realization that it wasn't going to work?
I'll fulfill the Jeff reading the tea leaves role a little bit here.
Yes. Here's what I think happened.
So we cover mergers and acquisitions a lot. And in a lot of these announcements, the acquiring company will talk about, we're acquiring this great company and their facility and their executive team and their employees, and they'll all stay on board and we'll all combine and better serve the market, whatever it may be. And there was none of that in this announcement a year ago. They made no mention of Blossburg, just highlighted Ward's complementary product line. And if they're able to make those products in Columbia, why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. So just reading those tea leaves a little bit, it seems to me that this may have been already baked in. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think anybody knows except whoever was in charge of those companies. But if you were going to make this decision, that's kind of how they would have worded both the acquisition announcement and the plant closure announcement, in my estimation.
Yeah, I just thought that was like boilerplate. We love the community, strong workforce, great talent. I just thought that went into every acquisition release.
I mean, I can.
It's a beautiful community. We're going to be here for a long time. And then just afterwards, I couldn't believe it.
Ward has a well-earned, strong reputation for rigorous quality control and reliable customer service, key attributes that we greatly value at ASC, and so forth.
Period.
Yeah.
No, well, okay, that is telling then. I mean, we could certainly read that, and it doesn't sound good, but I mean, your casual person that's just consuming the news might not catch that.
If I was covering it, I probably wouldn't have thought much of it.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought about with the story is when local officials try to rally to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try to save the factory. How? Rarely done. What are you going to do? You're going to give, is everything free?
I'm going to ask nicely.
Yeah, we're even going to pay the employees. What else are they going to do? I'm sure that they kind of threw any kind of incentive at them. And then also what also rings hollow is just, we're going to do anything we can for the workforce, for that adjustment period. And it's just, I've been around long enough to see that when big factories close, it is a long time, if ever, for that particular part of the city to recover. And it's sad. But you got to feel for these officials that just have no cards to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Blossburg itself is like a 1,500 person enclave. I don't think it's even officially a town. It's very small is my point. So
this is like a fifth of the population works there ish.
I mean, it's not, yeah.
Or nearby, yeah.
It's not going to go unnoticed, I should say.
Yeah. No, that is, I guess the one thing that we've been clinging to with a lot of these stories is, we always go back to the worker shortage. Hopefully there are people looking for similar skills, because I don't think it is realistic for that 3.5 hour commute.
No.
Even when we're talking about moving from Milwaukee to Deerfield and it's an hour, that's still pretty unrealistic, depending on your role with the company, I guess. All right. Well, our most popular story this week. South Carolina law would prevent purchases from in-state auto plant. Resurrected electrified auto brand Scout Motors wants to start selling the SUVs made at its forthcoming South Carolina factory in just 2 years. But unless state law changes, the workers making the cars won't be able to buy them, at least directly. Car Scoops reports that South Carolina is one of the some 20 states that continue to restrict direct-to-consumer vehicle sales. The policies require cars to be sold by dealerships. The rules were created to protect dealers from some of the auto industry giants. Now, in the modern era, it means that would-be rival car makers embracing a direct-to-consumer model like Tesla and Rivian can't sell their cars in these territories. Scout Motors is making electric SUVs inspired by the original Scout vehicles of the 1960s and 70s that were just super cool. The company's $2 billion facility in South Carolina is being built with the help of some $1.3 billion in state funding. Officials expect the project to create 4,000 jobs. Sales, as Andy mentioned earlier this episode, are expected to start in 2027, and the company, which is backed by Volkswagen, is hopeful that the state's regulatory landscape could change before then. Lawmakers have even introduced a bill that would allow these types of sales. But if that effort falls short, workers hoping to use, let's say, their employee discount will have to ship those cars to neighboring states. Anna, these times, they are a-changin'. Is it time that these laws play catch-up with modern consumer habits?
I mean, I think so. You've seen Tesla make a ton of progress on this in the last decade or so, but I do think that the patchwork of state laws on direct sales from manufacturers are confusing. They're pretty ridiculous. They're very old. Mm-hmm. And you would think, looking at the story, that Scout was remiss for choosing South Carolina for their plant when that's the case. But there's, as you said, so many other states that have bans, or they have limited D2C sales where they offer up like a handful of licenses that you can apply for, like Tesla has or whatever. And then that's it. as a way of, I guess, kind of straddling the line. Or there's a lot of loopholes that companies will exploit by they are allowed to open service centers, and you can just very kind of ridiculous. And I think, for a company like Tesla to have moved the needle a bit in some of these states and getting some of these modified is good. They should do that. The Teslas are very popular cars. They've sold very well. And I think that it's absurd kind of to limit consumer choice and make a company jump through a bunch of hoops just to satisfy this very archaic law.
Yeah.
And it doesn't reflect the way that people do business anymore, to your point. Because honestly, I think the limitations really point to what sounds like just pandering to a dealer network or a legacy automaker to give them this competitive advantage and allow them to get all the sales, and nobody else can.
Yeah.
But they're not stopping anyone in America from buying direct. They're just making it annoying for them to do so.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And to be honest, too, if you buy a vehicle in another state, you still have to pay the sales tax in the state where you register the vehicle. So there's not a ton of incentive for them to. I mean, they're still getting the money for the vehicles that are sold. And so I don't know. It just seems like something needs to change here, and maybe it takes a D2C seller to refuse to negotiate with a proposal from a state that won't allow them to sell their vehicles there. But I find it doubtful that anyone's going to do that because no one is really in a financial position to have that kind of leverage, I guess. So I don't know.
And it's wild that this has been so slow played. You know, that, and as the auto industry has evolved to, fewer types of cars, fewer options, a lot of sameness, not just to make it more cost effective from a manufacturing standpoint, but, hey, we don't need dealers selling, 20 different types of features and stuff like that. When I went and bought the van, it was like, we have this van, we have that van. It was just, they weren't selling me on anything. They're just like, what do you want to buy? Do you want to buy this van or do you want to buy that van? And I was just like, okay, these are decisions I could have made with a checkbox online. Still wouldn't have, need to sit in it, but whatever, that's my own personal preference. I don't know. Andy, when you look at this, do you see this having, at a base level, if I'm working at a car dealership, or not a car dealership, a manufacturer, we know a lot of families that have worked at GM plants. They have a long legacy of, okay, the uncle worked there and everyone bought a car per year based on what the allotment was, I feel like it's not a deal breaker for employees, but it's got to kind of suck that it's like, hey, you should buy one. We'll get it to you in 2027, maybe. And we're going to ship it. You're going to have to go a couple hundred miles to go pick it up.
No special treatment. Missed opportunity.
It's a headache, but we're in Wisconsin, which is another one of these 20 states that don't allow direct sales. And you still see Teslas and
everywhere.
To a lesser extent, Rivians. They're out there. They're just going to Illinois.
Yeah.
So it's, if you're making that big a purchase, you just bite the bullet and drive down to Chicagoland or wherever the nearest Tesla outlet is.
I guess you're right. It's not that we're, people shop for what they want. And I've heard stories of friends going as far as, going down to Louisiana, going down to Texas because they have the car in the color with the features that they want. Yeah. So I suppose when you look at it like that, we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. It was interesting.
It's still dumb, right?
It is still dumb. Yeah.
No?
I think can't we all agree that this is just a dumb rule? Just dumb.
Do we agree?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
It was interesting digging into kind of the history of these laws because they basically date to the mid-century, and how it was kind of explained was that, these dealers, obviously they pale in comparison to an automaker, even at that stage, but they're very visible businesses in their communities. And so they have a lot of local political clout. And then, so if you talk to your state lawmaker or whoever, and that gets run up the flagpole. So basically they have these kind of dealership protection laws, this patchwork of them all throughout the country, and they're still in place in almost half the states. So it'll be, again, this story is kind of more interesting from kind of a fun headline perspective than from a, these people won't be able to get their cars perspective. That's not going to be an issue. I think what's more interesting is maybe where this goes in South Carolina, which is the optics of these workers not being able to buy the cars they make in their home state versus whatever political muscle the dealership lobby or industry might have down there. So,
I mean, they had to have a meeting with employees, like benefits. You get 20% off a car or whatever. But, well, maybe.
Is that still a thing though?
I honestly, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Because the last time I heard it it was a while ago.
It was a ways back.
It was a ways back. But I mean, maybe it's some sort of like, hey, okay, we got to sell 8 and then we send the truck to go get them for everybody. Or whatever the
I don't know where the Scout dealership's going to be, but Augusta, Georgia is only a couple hours away. I did the math just out of sheer morbid curiosity. So it's not terrible. Right. Not a terrible drive.
Just got a carpool down.
Yep.
So I thought the story became a little bit more interesting because Scout was actually just sued in Florida by VW and Audi dealers. So these dealers are upset because they're taking $100 reservations for Scout, selling these reservations for the Terra and Traveler from Scout. Scout says that, the plan for Scout Motors is to operate independently of the VW group. Mm-hmm. But the dealers are kind of like, but are you?
They want their cut.
Are you though? Yeah.
How was this not worked out already?
I don't like, right? I'm sure someone sent a memo or an email and they just didn't read it. Like, what's the Scout anyways? Who cares? 3 years away. Really, it's really odd that it can be owned by one group at least. So 30% of Scout is owned by VW and yet still be considered an independent entity. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
But I mean, look at other alliances like Mitsubishi, Renault, Nissan. You don't see Mitsubishis at a Nissan dealership. You just don't.
I don't know. Like, I honestly, but what if this was an experiment by VW to just kind of open the door to D2C sales, and then all of a sudden you start seeing more?
I don't think they need any help opening. I mean, if they want to do that, they can do that,
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, because of these deals.
Because Ford's been talking about it for years. Who just put their cars on Amazon? Hyundai.
Oh, no, yeah. I don't, I haven't bought one yet. It's just so.
That's through dealerships, though. You buy on Amazon, and then it routes you through a dealership.
How is that buying online?
It's not. If we're being honest,
it's just so you have, because you already have your credit card information in there. I don't know. Are they loaning you money?
You can
right?
do financing through them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also maybe so that way you don't have to interface with a sales clerk at all.
That too.
I can't imagine. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to.
I will just say that my hit rate on buying things I haven't already purchased on Amazon, not great. Well, where you just like, you take a chance. It was just going to happen. I had to, we're in the market to buy a new keyboard for Des. And I was looking at all the overall pick and the Amazon picks for keyboards, which were just a little bit different than the exact one I was looking for. And I'm like, no chance am I going to buy that, because it is going to be garbage.
Yeah.
Probably broken by the time it comes. I don't care if the keys also light up. Want what I want. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on the website, but could still make a big impact on the industry going forward, or at least kind of funny. We have another word from our sponsor, Clio Communications. This episode is brought to you by Clio Communications, increasing efforts in digitalization, automation. Where did that come from? And analytics is a priority for 30% of operation and supply chain officers heading into 2025. However, the majority of the supply chain workforce still lacks the digital expertise needed to operate promising tools such as generative artificial intelligence and automation tools. The 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report from Clio Communications gives you a detailed look into what supply chain organizations are doing or not doing to prepare their workforce for emerging tech, along with the digital skills you need to embed into your hiring criteria. So download this 2024 Supply Chain Jobs Report right now. All right. In case you missed it, the stories maybe not as popular on the websites, but could still make a big change going forward. Andy, why don't you start us off? What do you have for in case you missed it this week?
I have the sort of demise of another one of the last American industrial conglomerates. We had GE split up into 3 companies. We had 3M just complete a major spinoff. And now Honeywell is announcing that it will split itself into 3 separate companies late next year after it had already divested some other operations either last year or early this year. Now, there'd been some smoke around this particular fire for some time. The CEO had been kind of openly reviewing its operations last year. The company had said late in the year, after an activist investor bought like a $5 billion stake in it, that it was looking into selling its aerospace operations. And then this week, it announced it will spin off both aerospace and its automation business that will join earlier sales of personal protective equipment and advanced materials. So just the latest evidence of the end of the conglomerate era, unless you want to loop the tech giants into that category, which I kind of do.
Yeah. It's just the end of it for now.
Yeah.
We'll have them all again in 10 years.
We kind of have them now. They're just conglomerating different stuff.
True. But it's always peaks and valleys with this, where everything gets too big. Then they got to spin everything off. And then once everything gets cozy again, then they start building back up. And I don't know. So when I saw this story, I was just like, all right, we will see you again, Honeywell. But it is kind of wild that Honeywell was still operating like this while so many people had already started kind of breaking apart.
Yeah.
Like they were just, I don't know if they were behind or just in better position.
Yeah, they hung on for a while.
Anna, did you have a chance to check out this story? It was, surprising and not surprising, just because anytime you do see these, when it happened to GE, when it happened to Alcoa, when you see these huge names, you're just like, wow, Honeywell, huh? What happened, man? Used to be cool.
Yeah, I know. I agree with Andy. I think that the days of this business model are essentially over. Who's left? I
don't know.
Are we like 3M?
Kind of 3M, yeah.
Yeah. DuPont broke apart a bit this year, right? This last year.
Well, they combined with. I
didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, this is years and years ago now, but they combined with Dow, and that split into 3 companies. So maybe they've split further, since I don't really cover that industry anymore. Couldn't tell you.
It is. It is interesting too, because the pandemic, everyone was talking about the need to diversify and how important that was.
Yeah.
But you just can't really do it.
Yeah. Diversify separately.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, I don't know, still shocking, but, you're right. I can't think of, I'm sure that we will get emails from, how did you forget this one?
Yeah.
And in advance, sorry. But, no, Andy, this was a wild story when it came across, because this just broke today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, kind of interesting to see what becomes of the 3 companies. So did it say what they were going to be called now?
They were just calling, the stories I saw, they were just going to call it Honeywell Aerospace, and I think that's going to be still headquartered in Phoenix or nearby. I was trying to look into what will remain of Honeywell, and every article I came across was a little vague on that. So I'm still working on that one a little bit.
Okay, what's left?
Yeah.
Okay. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I picked a story titled "Mexican Startup Tackles Plastic Waste by Converting It to Fuel."
Interesting.
I was very intrigued by the headline. But it ended up being not exactly what I was expecting of a story.
Okay.
So it's about a startup in Mexico called Pet Gas that's trying to get a handle on, it's a Gulf Coast city, Boca del Rio, that has a huge plastic waste problem like we see everywhere. And it's trying to convert discarded plastic into gasoline, diesel, and other fuels. It uses a process called pyrolysis.
Okay.
Pyrolysis. I don't know how to... I'm not.
It
science.
uses a process.
Pyrolysis.
A chemical process.
Pyrolysis.
Yeah, pyrolysis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, David.
100%.
So it probably is pyrolysis because it involves heating plastic in the absence of oxygen, which breaks it down to produce kerosene, paraffin, diesel, gasoline, coke. So the CTO at PetGas, Carlos Diaz, said that in a week, the machine can process 1.5 tons of plastic and produce 356 gallons of fuel. That's not super effective, but it's obviously just starting. So I was like, cool, great concept. Love like new recycling ideas for plastic, which is a dramatic problem and no one recycles it.
Is there a huge butt here?
There is a huge butt. So,
okay.
So later in the story, they go on to admit that the fuel, when you use it, does produce carbon emissions.
Okay.
But the company says that its net impact is less than comparable fuels because their fuel is lower in sulfur.
Good.
I don't know. I actually don't think so. I mean, it just like I was like reading it like, oh, cool. Oh, actually, no. So the article quotes Alexa Mendoza, who is a biologist specializing in plastic contamination of the sea. She's not involved in the project, but she did say that the plan was a good initiative, but a Band-Aid for a massive problem. I agree, but I mean, everything pre-scale is going to be viewed that way. But she also added that it should be viewed as a first step where, with the help of scientists, you could take into account what needs to be adjusted so that it doesn't become another source of pollution. So I don't know. It was like, I always find these types of stories intriguing. I'm glad that at first blush, they already were like, hey, there's some drawbacks here. Here they are. They need to be figured out. We're just trying something. Before, otherwise, like there's a brutal takedown 20 years too late. So, yeah.
I mean, that quote from Alexa Mendoza, quote, it doesn't seem to me a solution to put a Band-Aid on it and say, great, it's solved and let's do it.
I don't think anyone's saying
Which,
that.
yeah.
But rather it could be a first step. That's, well, I think it's like that Panasonic and Mitsubishi story that I had last week where it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But we're doing something. We're not just sitting going, yeah, plastic is a real problem and someone should do something soon.
That sucks. Yeah.
Good thing we've been recycling all these plastic bags for decades that are thrown in the garbage. So again, it's not perfect, but I do like when people are trying to move in that direction. Andy, did you have a chance to check out this story and what are your thoughts on the efforts from the startup?
I did, and like pretty much everyone else reading this, I would probably had the same reaction, like good.
We did it.
Good-ish.
Good-ish, yeah.
I mean, as of this point, we use gas, diesel, kerosene, Coke. We use these things, but the idea is we will not because the planet is warming up, so we need to stop using those. So it resolves one thing without addressing the bigger issue, which I think everybody gets. So.
Well, and it is as a startup, are they a startup or a nonprofit? Because it said that all the fuel it produces is actually donated to local fire departments and food delivery services.
It was referred to as a startup in the article.
Okay. So, I read that and it's like, okay, we're trying to do something good. And while it's not great, we're trying to do something good with it on the other end. So, a lot of good there.
We're trying.
First step.
Yeah. But I get it when they say, you got to take this you got to scale it.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of these efforts fall down. But again, a lot of people don't even start.
Yeah, and if Jeff were here, he might call this possibly
He might.
the thing that leads to the thing.
He might do that. And then I might go, he did it.
Bow, bow, bow.
And then,
And then we,
he would like take that as me being negative towards it. But actually, I'm just like, yes, he did it.
Yes, that's the thing.
I didn't think he could do it, but he did it.
He did it. Mine, in case you missed it this week, was a story. Actually, so I even went outside the rules a little bit. I dipped a day further behind. So instead of a week this week, it was this week in a day.
You can't do that.
It was just, I know. I was like, I broke the rules, but I didn't tell you until now. So sorry about that.
There's no standards anymore.
Nope. It doesn't.
Do whatever you want.
I under the cloak of night, I snuck into the Google document and rewrote the bylaws of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. I was like, and it shall be from 1 week and maybe a day. The news cycle.
Plus or minus.
Yeah. All right. So my story was about a candy maker who's turning to artificial intelligence to amplify the Valentine's Day experience. Ohio-based Spangler was founded in 1906 and offers various brands. You might know Necco wafers, Dum Dums, Bit O' Honey, some real bangers on the list. The company's sweethearts have a history that spans more than 100 years. From traditional sayings like be mine and kiss me to last year's situationship, one that befuddled myself. The candies are a Valentine's Day staple. This year, Spangler is rolling out, quote, commitment hearts, which feature artificial intelligence scanning technology that lets consumers express their desires for cohabitation, symbolic headstones, and even matrimony. The new candies read move in, marry me, and the number 4 ever.
Question mark.
Question mark. Well, I was trying to really sell it. Forever.
Oh, sorry.
Ever. After buying these new sweethearts for your sweetheart, customers can scan their candies with a camera and be directed to websites where they can access moving trucks, move in, marriage licenses for that's the marry me one, and for the forever ever, you can buy heart-shaped headstones. It's a Valentine's Day miracle.
So Sweetheart Candies put affiliate links on their heart-shaped candy? Is that
I guess so.
basically it?
Basically.
Do they have the note at the top that says we receive financial backing from any link that you click?
I don't know if your local county clerk's office counts as an affiliate link
Well,
for the marriage one.
How many
Moving trucks.
moving
saying.
There
trucks,
you go.
headstones? I'm sure they've sold at least one because there's that couple that's like, we did it. I chose this story because, everyone's trying to tap AI and fit it into that business model. And sometimes you just don't have to. Like if it doesn't work, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that situationship probably was a real banger for sales last year, but I don't know that I'm going to go running out for conversation hearts. So that way I can slide one to my significant other that says forever, ever. And then it has a list of things that like she must follow. No, now you got to go to this link. No, take a picture of it with your camera.
Yep.
Follow the link. Now pick out your color of headstone.
You could have done this without shoehorning AI into it.
I know. And actually that's probably one of the bigger takeaways is that it has nothing to do with AI.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to say conversation hearts. Candy Maker turns to QR codes and webcams.
Brand new technology,
Yeah.
like QR codes.
To amplify Valentine's Day experience. But I picked this because not only do I find it funny, I guess one thing that Spangler does is, does create conversations with these hearts, maybe outside of the ones they're looking to. But I don't know. It was how sometimes you don't need to always use the buzzword. And I don't know. It's still interesting to see a company with 100-year-old legacy still trying to change it up to boost sales or at least stay somewhat relevant. Maybe change the recipe. I don't know. Some of those hearts. Anna, did you have a chance to check out how this candy maker is revolutionizing the Valentine's Day experience?
Yeah, I did. And I agree. I think it is fun when traditional brands do fun stuff with marketing. I'm always a sucker for a good, just blatant, ridiculous, clickbait marketing campaign for sure. I'm curious what their sales figures are like these days because this formula is very old fashioned.
Yeah.
In terms of what is available now and what people consume. Do people still eat these?
Let's say yes. I will say that. So we do a neighborhood Valentine's Day exchange because a lot of schools don't do it anymore. And a lot of Valentines were the box of conversation hearts with people's names on them.
It feels like your kids might be the target demographic here. Not for these. These are very dark, but just for the product overall. So if they're not eating them, then I'm not sure who would be.
Yeah, I'll have to ask them if they've ever seen these.
I think there's still the market for just normal, traditional conversation hearts. And those are, our kids and maybe us. But then I do think, it's kind of how, what do they call the, when they do flash marketing gimmicks, what do they try, creating a viral moment? When all of a sudden we get ranch flavored tapioca, that also comes in a buffalo sauce and you're just and it's a collaboration with Hidden Valley and Frank's bring, I think they might be trying to tap that because part of this is also the vice president of marketing, Evan Brock, said that these hearts represent a transition from ambiguity to relationship defining because there was this new study that came out that surveyed 2,000 millennials and Gen Z and said that 39% of respondents want to commit to a serious relationship. 34% want to fall in love for the first or last time. And I think that's just him maybe sweetening the pot or a little bit, saying like, hey, we already know we're going to sell X amount of candy hearts every Valentine's Day. And if we get weird, we're going to add a 20% bump to that. Yeah. I don't know. And I would like to say, the transition from ambiguity, Andy, the fact that you were the one that explained what a situationship was to me in the office, I found very shocking.
Some things I know what they are and I don't know why. Just like facts just stick in here for reasons like important things that I should know I have no idea about, but just random facts just like hang in there.
I don't know.
I have never been in a situationship, so I couldn't tell. It's just I'm on the internet all day. It just happens. Yeah. I don't know.
You got a lot of you are the anchor of any trivia team. Like you got a lot of good facts in there.
I feel like I thought it was funny, and that's why it's stuck in my brain.
Well, I mean, I get it. Well, so a situationship is essentially Netflix and chill, right? Or like Friends with Benefits is a situationship.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Don't want to leave anyone hanging out there. Or maybe I'm just the last one.
Yeah. It's the new. It's complicated.
I guess.
Yeah.
True.
I'm too old for this.
Well, let's jump into our final thoughts before we get out of here this week. Andy, what's your final thought this week?
We talked a little bit about this off air, and by the time this runs in our newsletters, the game will long be over. But I'm struggling with how to interact with the Super Bowl this weekend. I don't really care what happens, but I would like to join the chorus of weirdos from Wisconsin who would like to note that the Green Bay Packers have won 3 consecutive championships twice. Mm-hmm. So the Chiefs, if they win, would not be the first. It's been done twice before.
Just point of clarity.
No one will be no one will be impressed if they do.
That's right.
There will be a ton of columnists from the Wisconsin area just being like, it's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal.
Will be like,
boring.
The first time in history. So you don't even subscribe to that. You know what? I'm at least going to watch for the entertaining value.
I'll watch it. Yeah. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I just am, I'll like start watching it and then I'll figure out what I want to happen. Because right now I don't really care.
Well, it's, I remember last year I was like, we're going to sit down as a family and we're going to watch it. It's going to be a fun experience. And then it wound up getting late. And then bedtime wound up taking longer. And
it's like a 4.5 hour game. It's unreal.
It is. Well, they got to like basically redress the entire stadium just for the halftime show and then clean up that mess. But looking forward to it.
Yep. Should be great.
My final thought this week was that, we took, some of us went and took a long weekend up in the North Woods. And while my core temperature has yet to return to normal after sitting on the ice for 3 days, it was just really good to kind of, sit on a 5-gallon bucket in the middle of the ice and pull some fish out of the lake and then have them for breakfast. It's just very simple, soothing time, to kind of reset. But man, there is no transition or buffer period. It is. Man, I am perfectly relaxed. I can't wait to see my family. And then you walk in the door and it's like, Dad, where have you been? And then, Carrie's immediately like, I'm so happy you're home. I'm going to go sleep for 2 days. And just, it's a lot of playing catch up. And it was a really good time with a lot of really good friends. And, hopefully the recycling truck comes quickly to that home because, refilled it. But it was a good, relaxing time. And I hope to get a chance to do it again. Maybe a few more fish next time. But
I've never been ice fishing. But
really?
But I can see the appeal. I like going up north in the winter.
Like the biggest difficulty beyond like the fish weren't as hot one of the most 2 of the days.
That's not really why you're up there,
I know, but so other than that it was so cold that even in the pop-up, the beers were freezing over.
Yep.
Oh.
And it was just there. I've never seen a tragedy unfold like that where it's just like, the beer is freezing.
We have to drink these very quickly.
Get it as close as you can to the heating element without setting the box on fire. But no, it was a really good time, and just want to thank actually loyal listener Seth for coming up with the place to stay. It was great, and I hope we get a chance to do it again. Plus, there's no sleep like that. Like,
it just does not sound soothing at all to me to sit on a bucket in the middle of a frozen lake and then eat fish for breakfast. Sounds like the worst day of my life.
Really? I mean, okay, so what if it was just, what if it wasn't that? What if it was just a quiet cabin in the woods overlooking the lake, and then it was just, good coffee and food?
Yeah, but that's a totally different thing.
Well, I mean, no, that's what we're doing outside of.
You could just go sit on a bucket. You don't have to fish.
On the ice. Yeah. And I will say that it does, you can get it pretty cozy in those shanties. Get a little sleepy. No? Just,
nope, I don't think so. Nope.
We're not going to do it. Yeah.
Not on my bucket list.
Oh!
Sorry.
Well, it's a final thought, not for everybody, Anna. What's yours this week?
So tomorrow I will have a 10-year-old, which is exciting.
Oh, man.
I know. And her teacher had told us at the beginning of the year that they weren't doing birthday treats this year.
Come on.
What?
Well, they have... the way she explained it made sense. There's it's a huge group of kids, but they have like multiple teachers and they move them around and all, but it's just like a lot to manage for them, I think.
Okay.
But they do have a snack break every day and we're allowed to send snacks. And so my daughter was like, I think she didn't use the word loophole, but she definitely identified a loophole. She's like, somebody brought fruit roll-ups once on their birthday for a snack. And it was just sort of like a special snack and that was allowed. So I emailed her teacher because she wanted to bring Gushers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And her teacher said yes. So she gets to bring Gushers tomorrow, not for a birthday treat, but just for a special snack. And this is permitted. So it's exciting. I was like, man, I would have loved to have brought Gushers when I was 10. It's like it is like being 10 in a word, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, when you see, it's crazy when you see a kid light up like, is that a fruit snack?
Yeah.
Or a gusher? Like, I can't remember the last time I had a gusher. My teeth are like hurt. I can actually hear them ringing just thinking about eating a gusher. Yeah. Or the other one was the fruit by the foot.
Yeah.
The first time they saw that, and it just keeps going.
You just
I'm like,
pull and pull.
You got to keep it off the floor, bud. You got to keep it off the floor. Well, that's cool. Happy birthday to her. That is wild that she is 10, though.
It is wild.
It's just like, I've just felt like another crow's foot go.
I know.
Like,
I know.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, Jeff, hope you're having a good time. Jeff is currently in parts unknown, vacationing somewhere in the United States. That's all he gave us. So if anyone has a Jeff sighting, just like take a wild, like gotcha journalism photo of him and send it in.
Really get up in his face. I like that.
Yeah, he does not want us to find him for some reason.
Yeah, just like come
Jeff.
come running up on him with your phone, just like, are you Jeff Ranke? Today Manufacturing Podcast. We'll give you like a T-shirt, a hat, and a koozie.
Yeah,
if you can find Jeff. All right, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Andy, Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can get it delivered to your inbox first. Doing a lot of slurring on the close. Sorry about that, guys. That's just tired, not anything in the coffee. All right, for Andy Zoll and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.